The board is set up, so I started. First thing I did, I measured. We want to make sure we have a square tortilla press. I mark my line where I'm gonna make my first cut. I first verified where I'm gonna make the cut. One thing I noticed was that I wanted to use a stop block because I'm gonna be making multiple cuts. I decided to go ahead and just make the cut and then turn it around and add the stop block on the other side. I set up my stop block ready to make the multiple cuts. As you can see with the stop block, I can make multiple cuts quick. Here, I'm going to be cutting the top. We want the top to be a 1/4 inch smaller than the bottom. I do the same process, do multiple cuts. Usually I do my service calls at people's houses, but this is a home project for YouTube. This is my first video, so I have a lot to set up and a little nervous making this video, so please bear with me. Here, I want to go ahead and start painting words so square, so both of them together, they're laid flat against each other. This project really doesn't take that long, but I originally just made one for my wife and she posted it on Facebook and all our friends found it. So here, I took my pencil and I wrote on both sides of the board. So when I pass it to the planer, I can see if there's any pencil marks, then I actually need to pass it one more time until there are no pencil marks. And now I know that it is actually flat. I then move all my pieces over to the table saw so I can put the edge on. I put the board against the table saw blade and we want to make sure that the blade is just barely over the board. This is just a safety issue. It's not necessary, but it's more of a safety issue. I then move the blade at a 30-degree angle and cut the boards. I then noticed I didn't like that at a 30-degree angle, and then later I redid the cuts at a 45 degree angle. They seem to be nicer than the 30-degree. I wanted to trim about half inch off the side edge at 5. So I put my fence at a 1 inch blade. That would cut off half an inch and 5 degrees. I started cutting and I noticed it was kind of slow. So I've figured I'd change the blade on this table saw. Either it's dirty or just needs to be replaced now. So I just did one, and then I switched the blade and did the rest. I took a piece of 2x4. I also did a block on it because I was gonna do multiple cuts for them. And I cut this. This is the part that holds the handle where you just squeeze it. And I cut all of these about 4 inches because the board itself, with their two together, was 3 inches. The handle is also about an inch and a half inch. So I ended up cutting that at 4 inches. This is the part where I cut off some bumps at a 45-degree angle. In this part, this is where I cut out where the handles go. I measured the handle how big I wanted it, and then I measured halfway in the board, and then I took the measurements and made the cuts. I did also a stop block, so I didn't go past the measurements. I first marked the board how high I want to go, and I made sure that the blade was actually about the same height as where the line was, so I didn't go past over. Did multiple passes. After I made the multiple passes, I went back and checked. And I tried to make the cuts as thin as possible, so I could just put the board halfway and just slide it back and forth and flip it around, do the same thing back and forth. And all we have to do is just clean it with a file. Here I'm measuring the board so I can cut the handle. I do the same thing here. I raise the blade so it just barely goes over the board. And I'm going to cut this board at 1.5 inch so it's pretty much a square piece. From the measurements, I just added 2 inches and went ahead and make the cut. So I could make this cut at 13 inch. 2x4s measure 1.5 inch, so I started marking 3/4 inch for one side and 3/4 going up and down. That will give me the center of where I'm going to drill the holes. This hole is where we're going to put the screw to attach the handle. I make sure I measure both sides and mark where the hole is going to be so it's pretty much dead center. It was going kind of fast, so you didn't really see when I drill the holes on the board that's going to hold the piece and also on the handle. Here I'm just sanding the edges to make it a little bit round and now smooth it out. With the band sander, I sand down all four corners as much as I could because we want to try to make this a round. Once I sanded all four corners, all I did was just sand it back and forth on two corners, and then I flip it, do another two corners, and then I just keep doing the same thing until it's as round as I want it. I then round it, and I wanted to get these as smooth as possible. So first thing I did, I was went over a 120 grid paper, And then I did a 240 sandpaper and that made it super fine on the sanding. I did all the boards off video. Same thing, I sand the handle and the piece that's going to hold the handle. And at this point, everything's sanded. Here I'm marking 3/4 inches up from the bottom on the handle, and then I the hold halfway. That way it allows the screw in and sits inside. If you want to add an oil finish and wax finish, you do it before adding the hinges and assembling this. I put tape down and then I mark on the actual tape where the hinges are gonna go. That way there's no pencil marks on the board. I use a self-centering drill bit to pre-drill the holes before I do the screws, and that way the hinge don't place. You can see me going back and forth with the self-centering bit, then adding the screws. First I started with the center ones, and then after I had the screw on there, I went to go ahead and did the outside edges. Then I did the same thing to the top. Here I'm measuring the center of the board and I'm marking it. And also do the same thing to the holder of the handle. Do the same thing, mark the center. That way I can align both of them and add my screws. I use stainless steel hinges and screws. That way they don't rust. And I also use screws that won't rust to hold the handle. The bolt that actually holds the handle is actually seat moving, so you can watch this. None of the bolts will actually rust. I lightly tapped the bolt into its place. I didn't want to use a hammer. It's too heavy, so I used a small needed so the bolt where it goes in there, just to sort of. Here I'm adding cutting board oil to the boards. I didn't do all of them. I just did a couple because it depends on what the customer wanted. Some of them wanted oil, some wanted some of them wanted beeswax, and some of them actually wanted personalized. And here you go. These are the finished pieces. The first installment made with 220 grit paper. Second one has oil beeswax, and the third one is actually personalized with laser engraver. They go for five in a local shop, just plain. Thanks for watching. This is actually my first video. Please hit subscribe. I'll be posting 5-minute videos on DIYs from daily service calls. Again, 5-minute videos on how to do repairs on your own.